I want to introduce Alice Borodkin. Alice was a former, and still is a former, Colorado, a Colorado State representative. And I call Alice the driver. She said, well, wouldn't it be interesting for us to put together a book? And she drove us, and we did. Then she said, wouldn't it be fun for us to go out and do readings? And she drove us, and here we are. So Alice Borodkin, who has her own new book that is about to come out. Alice.
It really was just a suggestion. Actually, I'm going to be reading from a book, my book, soon to be published, and it's called Caught Between the Bettys. It's dedicated to Betty Crocker and to Betty Friedan. I come from a generation of divas. Back in the 1940s and the 50s, divas were classy women. They were perhaps a little bit full of themselves. They wore glamorous dresses, and their hair was piled high on their heads, and sometimes they would fashion it into a chignon held in place with tortoiseshell hairpins. Their nails and their lips were often painted bright red. They never went anywhere without gloves. Most did not go to college. Who needed college back then? Your job was to find a man. Divas are part and parcel of the times that I grew up in. I grew up during World War II, and I remember blackouts and end rationing and men and women in uniform and Rosie the Riveter, war bond rallies, and what seemed to a young girl to be the excitement of a world at war. In those days, men and women were expected to adhere to certain roles. The men had theirs as the proud protectors and providers of their families, and the wives and the women had theirs as housewives and mothers who relied solely on their men as breadwinners. Both played their parts very well, if only on the surface. When I married in the 1950s, I tried to follow all the rules. Make your man happy, keep your house clean, and prepare wonderful meals a la Betty Crocker. What I never counted on was the other Betty coming along, Betty Friedan. With her publication of The Feminine Mystique, I was now caught between the Bettys. Thanks to Betty Friedan, I realized that I wanted to do more with my life and be validated for who I was and what I was doing. I didn't know I was bucking the system, but as I think about it now, I sure was. Betty Friedan was one of the first feminists to write about the problem without a name. We were the ones who questioned the difference between ironing your husband's shorts and what happened to my college degree. This is my memoir, with a few revelations for those of us in my era, and it is also a history lesson and a cautionary tale for the next generation. I like to say that I wrote this memoir because I took a nap when I was 12, and when I woke up, I was 80.
And we thank you for driving us. We appreciate that.